Well, hello, everybody. All right. As we do every single week, I want to start by saying hello to our campuses. So for those of you at our Racine campus, hi. Kenosha campus, we welcome you. And for those of you who watch online week after week, thanks for being a part of our online community. I know there's many of you who do that faithfully. And then, of course, our wonderful Weekends on Wednesday campus with more energy than we know what to do with. Always a lot of fun here at Weekends on Wednesday. Now, at the start of this year, start of 2018, we launched a series that we're just simply calling Standout. And we started talking about what it takes to create an exceptional life and what it takes to live a life that's above average. Now, this is an interesting series because if we were to go around and take a poll, very few of us actually think that we're average or below average. Right? If you really just kind of break it down, most of us would say, well, I think I'm an above average employee. I think I'm above average in how I approach finances. I'm probably above average in how I do relationships. I'm definitely above average when it comes to intelligence and it comes to education. But the truth is, statistically speaking, we're pretty much average. Now, there's another group of people here who would say, hey, I totally embrace that. I don't mind being average. I don't mind being ordinary. I don't mind the fact that I'm pretty much like everyone around me. But the truth is, if we really understood what it was like to be average and what average meant, I don't think any of us really would want to be there, right? Because the average person is drowning in debt. And the average person has a whole lot of areas in their life that they know they need to grow on. The average person is totally unhappy in their relationships. They're unsatisfied at work, mainly because of their boss. All right? The average person would admit that they only have a few close friends. And so this series is about how do we live a life that's above average. Now, to have a life that's above average doesn't mean we're more important than anyone else. It doesn't mean that intrinsically I have more value than other people. It simply means that I've learned to capitalize on the personality and the passions and the giftings and the opportunities and experiences that God has trusted me with. And so if you've missed any of the last few weeks, you can always go to greatlakechurch.com, our homepage. You can click on current series, and you can catch up. So throughout this series, what we've been saying is that our life is represented by this sphere. Our life's represented by this sphere. We just said, man, we have different opportunities and experiences. We're colorful individuals. We've been given different talents and passions. We're creative, all designed by God. And what we've been saying is if we want to spend our life using those things primarily on ourselves to get ahead and to build our empire and to build a kingdom for ourselves, then our circle of influence and our circle of impact really isn't going to grow much. But if we learn how to take our personalities and bless others, if we learn how to take our passions and use it for the good of someone else, if we learn how to take what God's trusted us with and use it for others, the impact of our life begins to grow and grow and grow. So, each week, what we've been doing in this series is we've been looking at the difference between someone who's average, someone who's ordinary, and someone who's extraordinary. Someone who's above average. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to wrap up this series with a very specific thought. One more time, looking at the difference between people who are average and above average, people who are average and people who stand out. Here it is. Average people think about the moment. Standout people think about the future. Average people think about the moment. Standout people think about the future. So the average person, the ordinary person, cares primarily about what's happening right now. They're individuals who love to live in the moment. They care about happiness and security and comfort and pleasure, which really all of us do. But the difference is they are so obsessed with it that they're always thinking about it in terms of right now, this moment, today. Standout people are different. Right? Standout people think about the future. They're constantly evaluating how are my decisions and my actions and my behavior impacting my life weeks from now, months from now, years from now, and in some cases even decades from now. Several years ago, when Jerry Seinfeld was just beginning his TV show, he was doing stand-up one night at an open mic at a comedy club and just enjoying himself. And it happened to be that very same night, there was another comedian who was just getting started, and an amateur guy named Brad Isaac. And when Brad saw Jerry at this comedy club, he rightfully assumed this is probably going to be the only time that I have an opportunity to interact with a legend. And so he walks up to Jerry and he says, "Hey, Jerry, excuse me." He says, "But I'm just wondering if you have any advice for me. I'm a new comedian. I'm just wondering, do you have any advice for me on how I can be a great comedian?" And Seinfeld's response was, "Well, the way to be a better comedian is to create better jokes." And then he says, "And if you want to create better jokes, then you need to write every single day." And then he actually went a step further. He told Brad, he said, "I want you to go and get a big wall calendar." So I made up a wall calendar for us here in this room today, okay? He said, I want you to put up a wall calendar, and every day that you bring yourself to write jokes and you give some energy and attention to it, what I want you to do is I want you to put a big red X over that date. And he says, and the goal is that you would do this regularly. And you would write jokes, and at the end of the day, be able to put an X over that date. And then he looks to Brad and he says, basically, you have just one job. Never break the chain. Just keep letting the chain grow. It's going to motivate you, it's going to fuel you, and it will help you become an excellent comedian. Now, you've never heard of Brad Isaac, neither have I, other than preparing for this talk, because the fact is he never became a great comedian. He became a software designer and a blogger. But he says the advice that Seinfeld gave him is something he's applied absolutely to as many areas of his life as possible. He says, when I was learning to program computers, I'd have a wall calendar up. And every day that I brought the energy and would try to study at some level on how to get better at programming computers, I'd put an X on the calendar. When he was learning to design web pages, did the same thing. Have a calendar up and put red X's. This is what he says about Seinfeld's advice. He says, it works because it isn't the one-shot pushes that get us where we want to go. It is the consistent daily action that builds extraordinary outcomes. In other words, we don't go from this to this in a week. We don't go from this to this in 6 months. It is a lengthy process. It is the consistency of day after day after day of applying ourselves. And those who stand out in this world, those who have the greatest impact, the greatest influence, they're the individuals who have learned the power of bringing themselves over and over and over into their work and into their family and into their parenting and into their marriage over and over and over. But most of us don't do this. It's not because we don't want to. It's just we live in a culture that is absolutely addicted to immediacy. Right? Everything's going to happen right now. Everything's about the moment. And so if we're going to maximize our potential, if we're going to become the people God has given us the potential to become and really designed and wants for us to become, then we are going to have to learn the power of faithfulness. We're going to have to learn how to discipline ourselves to think about the future. Now, in the Bible, there are lots of different themes that surface, right? Things that aren't just talked about one time or two times, but really several times all throughout the scriptures, all throughout the different letters and books and poems that make up our Bible. Well, one of the most dominant themes in the Bible is the theme of faithfulness. And here's what we learn throughout the scriptures. Faithfulness matters. It just matters. Consistency matters. Dependability matters. It matters in schools. It matters in homes. It matters in churches. It matters in marriages. It matters in places of employment. It matters. And if there was one habit that I wish the people of Great Lakes Church could absolutely learn to cultivate in our life, it would be the habit of faithfulness. Because quite simply, the people who stand out in this life, The people who are the most spiritually healthy, the people who are the most financially healthy or physically healthy, the people who are relationally healthy are the people who've learned how to apply basic principles to their life over and over and over again, and they're just relentless about it. Now, there is a book in our Bible called Proverbs. Right? It's filled with lots of powerful statements. That's really what a proverb is. It's this. Usually it's a sentence long, but it's a statement that's just jam-packed with wisdom. All right, so I'm going to read one of those proverbs to you. Here it is. Ants, they aren't strong, but they store up food all summer. Wow, isn't that awesome? Ants, they aren't strong, but they store up food all summer. I mean, how did that even end up in the Bible? Right, somewhere between like Moses leading the Israelites out of Egypt after 400 years in slavery and the miracles of Jesus, you have this sentence, ants, they aren't strong, but they store up food all summer. Now, as ridiculous as a sentence like this is, the idea here is that the way ants survive, the way they build entire colonies, the way they get through tough weather is they're relentless. They just go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. All these repeated trips carrying one seed or one grain or one little piece of food at a time. Now, this proverb was actually first shared with a group of people living in an agricultural type of society. 3,000 years ago, most families relied on farming for their financial health, to be able to provide for the people in their family. And in an agrarian culture 3,000 years ago, almost everybody was one or two, sometimes three harvests away from complete financial disaster. And so the difference between families that stayed on top of things, that stayed on top of their crops and their vineyards and their fruit trees and their flocks of sheep, and they just gave the right attention to it, and the difference between them and the families that neglected those areas was a huge difference in lifestyle. It was this difference between being financially healthy and being poverty-stricken. And so the author of Proverbs writes about the ant, and he focuses on the power of small things done repeatedly. Small things, small disciplines, small principles that you apply to your life can absolutely build momentum. They can make a difference. More than 150 years ago, plans were put into place to build a suspension bridge across Niagara Falls. As you can imagine, a huge challenge 150 years ago, because there was really no easy way to get wire across this gorge of about 800 feet. And so one of the suggestions that came up for addressing this challenge of how to get some wire across was to initially just fly a kite across the river, so at least there would be a string from one side to the other. And so the builders enlisted a bunch of kids and kind of actually had this contest to see who could get the kite across the river. And sure enough, a young American boy did it. He actually was on the Canadian side, so he flew his kite from the Canadian side over to the American side, and then the workers used the kite string to pull another string across that was just slightly bigger. And then they used that to pull a light cord across. And then they pulled some more light cords across. And then they were able to pull some heavier cords across. And eventually they were able to pull some ropes across until eventually they were able to pull a wire cable across. And that was the start of the suspension bridge, which for years carried people and horses and carriages. Do not miss this. Faithfulness produces results. Faithfulness produces results. You're frustrated with where your kids are at in life? Stay faithful as a parent, speaking truth to them, building principles in them. You're frustrated where you're at spiritually? You stay faithful to some of the habits that you've developed. Maybe it's the habit of gathering with other followers of Jesus. Maybe it's the habit of reading the Bible. Maybe it's a habit of listening to worship music. Stay faithful. Maybe you're in a recovery group and you feel like you're never going to get past this season where you're at. Stay faithful. Faithfulness produces results. Things that seem small, things that seem insignificant can build momentum. There's a lot of power in repeating small disciplines and small habits and small principles over and over in the key areas of life. Okay, that's true whether we're talking about health, physically, whether we're talking about money or parenting or career or spiritual maturity. And we all have areas of life that we want to grow in. We all have areas of life, I'm sure, that we want to mature in. But the reason it's such a challenge is because change happens slowly, really slow. And the process is really boring. It's often very repetitive. It's the same thing over and over and over again. And so I get really excited. And I say, you know what? I am going to lose some weight. And so here we go. It's Monday morning, and I am going to eat healthy, and I'm going to walk for 3 miles. And then Tuesday comes around, and I do the same thing, and Wednesday, and Thursday, and Friday, and Saturday. And so I'm so excited. On Sunday morning, I step on the scale, and I have lost 1 pound. So frustrating. And it's just easy to say in that moment, well, I'm going to break the chain. It's not working. Because the fact is, I don't want to lose 12 pounds over the next 16 months. I want to lose 37 pounds by my high school reunion next Thursday. And that's how it works. Right? I want to save money. I want to have a great retirement. But instead of taking money out of every one of my paychecks, what I'd rather do is spend a whole lot of time praying that I win the lottery. I want to become mature in my faith. And so I'm willing to get up in the morning and I'm willing to pray. I mean, come on. I'm going to do it. I'm going to pray early in the morning, or I'm going to take my lunch hour and I'm going to use it to read the Bible, or I'm going to get into a group and I'm going to start developing community around me. I'm going to do it. In fact, I'm going to stay so faithful to it, man. When Wednesday's going to come along, Thursday, I'm going to keep doing it. I'm just going to tell you, 3 weeks into this, 4 weeks into this, you're still going to feel like a spiritual loser, right? You're going to look at your life and say, everything in me is the exact opposite of Jesus. A lot like Pastor Justin. You're going to say, there's so much in me. There's so much in me that I want to change. Change happens slowly. And if you want to know how slowly, if you want to know how long it's probably going to take to see a difference in a significant area of your life, here it is. 3 to 5 years. But you're never going to hear a diet commercial say that. You're never going to hear a commercial that says you can lose 18 pounds in 18 months if you just eat a little bit less and walk a little bit more. Nope. But that's the way it works. Imagine being 16 years old and just having a little job on the side, and you say, man, I'm going to save $20 a week. Right? I work at a fast food restaurant. I'm going to save $20 a week. With 3-4 weeks into that, you got $80, but it doesn't feel that motivating. You do that for 5 years. Now you got a few thousand in the bank, but you got college and you got car expenses and you've got going out to eat with your friends. And so it feels like this isn't even worth it. And then you do it for another 5 years, and now you're 26 years old, and you look and you've got $10,000 in the bank. And you're going to say to yourself, but still, relatively speaking, that isn't that much. But here's what I can tell you. There are millions and millions and millions and millions of people over the age of 50, double income households that can't get their hands on $10,000. But you'd be able to do it at the age of 26 by just small little habits over and over and over again. Faithfulness produces results. A few years ago, I was talking to someone about their New Year's resolution. They said, my goal this year is to read the accounts of Jesus' life as many times as I can. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They're in the Bible, these different manuscripts. And I didn't say this to them at the moment, but I thought this is going to be a powerful exercise because I can pretty much guess the first time reading it, not going to do much. Second time reading it, third time reading it, fourth time reading it, fifth time reading through, you're going to start noticing things. You're going to start seeing things. Your heart's going to start getting a little bit softer. Faithfulness produces results. Last year, I read a book called A Simple Act of Gratitude. It was about a guy who decided he was going to write one thank you note every single day for a year. Now think about that. You start writing thank you notes every single day, and it's sometimes I'm sure it's a boring exercise. Sometimes you're probably going to bed and you're thinking, dude, I forgot. I just don't have the time to do it. But okay, I'll get out of bed and I'll write it. Maybe it'll be a sentence long, right? And how long do you think it would take writing one thank you note every single day for your heart to finally get to the point where you just naturally start to see the positive in life and the good in people? It might be 100 thank you notes. It might be 200 thank you notes. But you can't break the chain. Because one day of writing thank you notes isn't going to change your perspective. 1 week isn't going to change your perspective, and it's likely 1 month isn't going to change your perspective. You'll start thinking, this is stupid. Why did I ever commit to this? But I'm telling you, 3 years in, you're going to start to say, wow, I'm not always sinking into this vortex of myself all the time. I'm starting to see the good in life. Let me encourage you with this. Some of our greatest impact in life is simply showing up and doing the same thing over and over and over again. And it's possible that you and I will miss out on our greatest opportunities for impact and influence if everything always has to be new and interesting all the time. So you want to be a standout nurse? You want to be a standout employee? You want to be a standout employer? You want to be a standout coach? You want to be a standout guy who works in the trades? You want to be a standout mom, a standout dad? You want to be a standout volunteer? You want to stand out in whatever area of life that you're in? Then keep doing the best job you can. Keep bringing your energy day after day after day into whatever setting you're a part of. Keep learning how to be a life-giving person. Keep doing your job with excellence. Keep doing the task in front of you with as much energy and passion as you can. And it may take 3 to 5 years to feel like you've made a dent or you've made an impact, but I'm telling you, it's going to happen. A couple years ago, a movie came out called Fences. Very emotional movie with Denzel Washington and Viola Davis. And in the movie, they are a married couple, and there's a scene where they're standing in the backyard and they are getting into a huge argument with each other. And Viola just starts going off on Denzel. And she's sobbing and she is sniffling, snot's going everywhere. She's blubbering, she's stuttering. It's just a fascinating scene. I wish I had time to show you all of it. I don't, but let me show you a few seconds of this clip.
It's not easy for me to admit that I've been standing in the same place for 18 years.
Well, I've been standing with you. I've been right here with you, Troy. I got a life, too. I gave 18 years of my life to stand in the same spot as you. Don't you think I ever wanted other things? Don't you think I had dreams and hopes? What about my life? What about me? Don't you think it ever crossed my mind to want to know other men, that I wanted to lay up somewhere and forget about my responsibilities, that I wanted someone to make me laugh so I could feel good?
Now, the reason I wanted you to see that scene is because Viola won an Academy Award for Best Actress in a Supporting Role in that movie. But before it was a movie, it was a play. And Denzel Washington and Viola Davis were in this play, this Broadway type of play, which they performed 114 times. Which means that when she is on camera, and we don't know how many takes it took to get there, but when she's on camera, at the very least, that was her 115th time doing that performance. And she won an Academy Award for it. And I just have to step back and say, how does someone bring that kind of emotion and that kind of energy into something 115 times? Eventually, it's just going to be wearing. Eventually, you're going to lose some of the passion. Eventually, you're going to lose some of the emotion behind it. But she kept it. Faithfulness is rewarding. She walks away with an Academy Award. We don't walk away with awards for our parenting. We don't walk away with awards for our marriage, but it is absolutely rewarding. Standout people find a way to push past the boredom and the routine because they're constantly thinking about the future. And if you're a parent of grade school kids, you need to hear this. Because every day's the same, right? You wake them up, you force them to get dressed because they'd go to school naked if you let them, right? You give them breakfast. They don't brush their teeth. They just go on out of the house. You got to remind them to go back in and brush their teeth. You get them off to school. They come home. They play a little bit. They do some homework. They eat. watch some TV, I don't know, and then you get them off to bed, and the next day you wake up and it is the same thing over and over and over again. And there are weeks and months that you'll do the same thing, and you say, nothing's happening, my kids aren't growing, they're not maturing. Repetition's not fun. Structure and stability in a family is not the most sexy thing in the world. It's actually pretty boring. I mean, you got structure and stability in your family, you might have the reputation of being the most boring family in the entire neighborhood. But it produces results, and it's rewarding. I grew up in a family that, quite honestly, we didn't do big vacations. Never went to Disney World and never went to Disneyland. We ate out at restaurants maybe one time, on a great year, 2 times in the year. Right? We didn't go see movies at any point. It wasn't because my parents were anti the movies. It was just financially trying to afford all this stuff. But we had structure and stability, and we knew we were loved. The Apostle Paul, who wrote so many of the letters that are in our Bible, he writes this. He says, so let's not get tired of doing what is good. At just the right time, we will reap a harvest of blessing if we don't give up. He said, just keep persevering. Don't break the chain, just keep it going. This past week, I heard that Tom Hanks is going to be playing Mr. Rogers in an upcoming movie. Right? And of course, most of us are familiar with Fred Rogers because we grew up watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Yeah. For 33 years, from 1968 to 2001, Mr. Rogers went through the same drill every single day. The theme music began to play. And he walked through the door singing the same song, It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. All right, we're going to stop right there. I don't want this whole thing, right? And he walks down the steps, and what does he do? Every single day, he does the same thing. Takes off his jacket, puts it in the closet, and takes out a sweater. Yeah, he puts the cardigan on and zips it up, and then he walks down a couple more steps, and he's singing, and he takes off his dress shoes, and he puts on his tennis shoes, and he laces up the tennis shoes as he concludes the song, won't you be, please won't you be my neighbor? Hi, neighbor. 33 stinking years. I mean, at some point, you're just like, why don't you just walk in and say, I'm jumping over the railing, I'm landing on the couch, and be like, what's up, world? 33 years of doing this. But here's the thing. Mr. Rogers knew that a lot of his viewers came from stable environments and from secure homes, but he also knew there were a whole lot of people who were watching, a whole lot of kids that didn't have stability, that didn't have security. They didn't know who was bringing home the groceries. They didn't know where mom was all the time. They didn't know where dad was all the time. And so he understood that his job was to bring stability and security to children. And so for 33 years, he was a consistent neighbor. He ended up making the Television Hall of Fame. He was given the Medal of Freedom, which is the highest civilian honor an American can receive, because he was consistent. Faithfulness creates security. Faithfulness creates security. Mr. Rogers bringing himself again and again and again. His job gets boring, it gets repetitive again and again and again. And our goal isn't to get some Medal of Freedom, and our goal isn't to have our name in the history books. It's to make a difference through consistency. In Acts chapter 9, we read about a widow named Tabitha who had recently passed away. So her family and her friends are just mourning her loss. They hear a rumor that Peter, one of the disciples of Jesus, is in town. A couple of them run out and say, hey, Peter, could you come to the house? There's a lot of people mourning over Tabitha's loss. We just need some encouragement. And so he gets to the house, and here's what happens. As soon as Peter arrived, they took him to the upstairs room where Tabitha's body was. The room was filled with widows who were weeping and showing him the coats and other clothes Tabitha had made for them. Now, don't miss this. 2,000 years ago, most widows in Eastern culture were living in desperate poverty. They relied on their husbands to support them. And so if you're a widow, you're living in poverty. And here's Tabitha, herself a widow, and she's doing what she can to be a support to other widows. And obviously she made a difference because they come up the stairs, and what's she doing? The widows are in the room, ladies that she had impact and influence, and they're saying, hey, look at Tabitha, she made this for me. Tabitha, she made this for me. Now, it doesn't say she went and bought the clothes, it says she made them, which means day after day after day after day, she would spend time sewing. She would spend time buying material, measuring. Very time-consuming process. But she'd say, who am I going to impact today? Whose life am I going to make a difference in today? And we don't know much about Tabitha. It was obvious she didn't have this historical legacy that she left. Nothing she did was all that massive or big, but she was faithful, and her faithfulness made a difference. I mean, think about how we feel. Our clothes are jam-packed, but we buy a new outfit, we just feel great. Like, oh, check it out. I feel good. I got 600 more of these, but I feel awesome. So imagine for these widows who had very, very little, imagine how they felt when they put on these clothes that Tabitha had made for them. It brought them warmth and dignity and hope. Faithfulness brings hope. It produces optimism in people. It creates an environment of trust. Like, I know you're going to be there for me in difficult times. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that we have to stick with something forever. Right? There's going to be a season that we just say it's over. I was a coach for years. I'm no longer a coach. Right? At one point in my life, a lot of you probably don't even know this, I was a dancer in downtown Chicago. Okay? Professional dancer. I gave that up. Right? Well, no, I'm messing with you. All right? I have to say that because we always have guests, and I don't want them Googling my name and saying dancer, Dave. Here's the deal, man. There's going to be times you say, I worked for that nonprofit, I served on their board, now I'm not going to do that anymore. I volunteered in this ministry at church. I've been at it for 5 years. It's time I find a different ministry to serve in. So I'm not saying you got to stick with something forever. I'm saying that sooner or later you need to land. Because if everything has to be new and interesting all the time, you're never going to land anywhere. And it's going to be easy to flip from job to job and hobby to hobby and marriage to marriage and from group to group just because things stop being interesting. So there are times that we just have to step back and recognize the power of consistency. Not how I feel in the moment, but the future I'm trying to build. Faithfulness matters. It matters in marriages. It matters in communities. It matters in homes. It matters in hospitals. It matters. I mean, just look at the heart of any organization that has thrived for several years. At the core, almost every single time, you will find a group of people who've just kept showing up and being faithful. It matters. It produces results. It's rewarding. It creates security. It brings hope. So do you want that in your life? Do you want a life that is maximized? Then just keep showing up and keep being faithful and keep applying the principles that you know matter. So Brad Isaacs in this comedy club, open mic night, sees Seinfeld. He says to Seinfeld, hey, what would you tell a young comedian? What advice would you give me? And Seinfeld says, hey, get out a calendar and start putting X's on the days that you bring yourself and your energy into your work. And your only job is to not break the chain. And that's a fascinating bit of advice. What's even more fascinating is the advice Seinfeld did not give. He didn't say, well, what you really need to do if you're going to be successful is you need to find an agent who gets you onto Conan, who gets you onto Letterman, who can somehow get you onto the Tonight Show, because that's what you need for a breakthrough. He didn't say what you need to do is create some phenomenal YouTube video that's going to viral and go rocket into popularity, because that's what you need for a breakthrough. He didn't focus on the breakthrough. He focused on the day-to-day routines. Just keep being faithful. So what is it for you? What is it for you in 2018 that you just say this has to look different at the end of this year? Is it your marriage? Is it a relationship with one of your kids? Is it a group that you're a part of and you just want to get to the end of the year and say, man, I fulfilled my obligations to this group. I'm a better person because I was in this group. Is it something that's attached to your employment? What is it? Stay faithful, because average people live for the moment. Standout people, they think and they live for the future. Now, at the start of this series, I gave everybody a really morbid homework assignment. I said, I want you to consider planning your own funeral. And on the current series of our website, we actually have some resources on how to do this. But in essence, I just said, who do you want at your funeral? What do you want some of the key people to say? And how do you want to be remembered? My hope is that all of us with conviction can say we know who we want to be at the end of our time on this earth. But regardless of what that looks like, it's going to require faithfulness. So I'll end today with the key verse of our series. It's on our note sheet inside of our programs. Simply this: be on guard, stand firm in the faith, be courageous, be strong, and do everything with love. Translation: be faithful. Keep showing up day after day after day, doing what you know you need to do. Now, next week, we are launching a relationship series that I hope you carve out time to be a part of. If you're not in a relationship, carve out time to be a part of this. Because this isn't stuff, what we're talking about isn't just stuff that we apply in a husband-wife relationship or a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. It is stuff that we will be able to apply to any relationship in our life. So the title of this series, Relationship Restart, and this is saying in those relationships that maybe have drifted, that seem to have gone distant, what can we do to press the button to give it a restart? And not only do I hope you're here, I hope you invite someone to join you. Let me pray, and then our campus pastors will take over at our campuses, and we'll have a great week. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your love. We thank you for your mercy. We thank you for your grace. I pray that through your Holy Spirit, you would give us the passion and conviction to stay the course and to do the things that we know we're supposed to be doing in the key areas of life so that we will reap a harvest because we did not give up. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.